Welcome to More Action, the podcast for entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals. I'm your host, Shelly Bryan, and together we have candid conversations with industry leaders to uncover valuable wisdom and lessons learned. My hope is you use these lessons to intentionally take more action in business and life. I hope you share and enjoy. Well, I would not let the year end on the show here without having an episode dedicated to my 5 favorite books of 2024. So if you're new to the show here, welcome. Excited to have you on. I hope we're connected on social media because you'll see why this all makes sense. Growing up, I did not like reading. I hated reading. I looked for the Cliff Notes or the books that had movies so I could do that instead and kind of fake it. Now, reading and really since basically 2019, reading has changed my life. And so any chance that I get, I take the opportunity to invest into reading because it helps me become a better leader, a better mom, a better wife, a better business owner, just a better human. And I love learning from other people. Now, that being said, of course, I'm very selective. Very, very selective on what I read and when it comes to podcasting, what I listen to. So I want you to just know right off the bat how grateful I am that you are choosing this show as one of yours that you are investing and trusting, and know that I don't take that lightly. And so I have created this my favorite. I've read many books this year. I didn't count them all, whatever. I'm not trying to win a trophy for books read, but I want to know what were the most impactful ones. And so this episode is for the 5. I'm going to link them in the show notes. I earn 0 commission. I just want to pay it forward that if you are willing to invest in yourself through reading, I do it at 5 a.m. before anybody wakes up. So I'm not interrupted. If you invest, you will get something out of it. And some of these books that I'm going to mention, one of them in particular is actually a reread. So that's something I'll share a little bit more about, is that I believe in the power of rereading certain books, certain powerful books at different points in your life. Once you've gained new experience, it's a whole new perspective when you read something from the past. But these reads have provided powerful lessons on persuasion, success, resilience, decision-making, wealth building, just overall thought processes. And it just every time I read something new or I learn about someone new, you'll hear that today too, is I want to dive in and learn more about them. What made them tick? Why were they different? What can I take to be able to apply to my life? What do I pass on? And that's what's great about reading is you don't have to take everything and, apply it to your life. But there are certain things that can be life-changing. And so these 5 books that I'll go through today have truly been powerful for me this year. And I want to leave them here, and hopefully you take the time to maybe grab one of these, even get it on Audible, listen to it, read it. I like the physical. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to show you. I have the physical books. I'm the girl with the tabs, the bunny-eared pages, a pen, a highlighter, because I like to come back to it. Because I'll be like, oh, something will happen. I'll be like, I want to read more about that and refresh my memory. Okay, enough of that. Let's dive in. I'm going to give you a little bit about the book on each one. Like I said, they'll all be linked in the show notes, so you can grab them there on Amazon, and away we go. So the first one is Influence. It's the first one I'm showing you here on YouTube. It's called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Dr. Robert Cialdini. And he is actually, when he wrote this book, I believe this book was in the 80s. It was written in the 80s, if I'm correct. Oh my gosh, I can't find it. I believe it was an 84 book. He is a professor. He was a professor at ASU, right? So fellow Sun Devils, what's up? I didn't even know that when I grabbed this book, but it made me love him that much more. So this book, right? A psychology book. Why the heck would I read a psychology book? It'll all make sense. Keep tuning into the end. But Dr. Cialdini talks about 6 principles of persuasion: reciprocity, commitment, social proof, authority, liking, and scarcity. So when you look at like everything we do is psychology, and being able to understand how our mind thinks and how the minds of those we interact with think or understand information, I mean, that would be so powerful in so many different ways. So this book, I love older books because they were written purely to share, in my opinion, they were written purely to share information, not for any type of personal vanity, let's say. Some of the new books can be like that. Okay. So that's why I say be careful on what you read. But this book, like what I love about it is some of these approaches, and I'm going to share a couple with you right now before we move on to the second book. But they literally continue to impact like my approach to negotiations, whether it's negotiations with clients, with vendors, with subcontractors, with my husband, Chris, with my kids. It helped me understand and approach negotiations very differently, and just relationships in whole. And one thing that we are doing right now, I mentioned this in another episode, is that we are currently redoing our construction website. It is very dated. It's not who we are and what we're doing. And from a marketing side, we're going back and just bringing together all cohesiveness, and the website is a key player in this right now. And so as I am creating this, I'm actually interviewing 3 different companies right now, maybe selected one by the time this one publishes. But we are going to definitely use the power of social proof and authority, when those are going to be 2 key components of psychology when it comes to creating our website. And you can think about this when you see this, you can see this with interactions with people. It's all over social media, right? You can see who's faking it, who has the real social proof, who has the authority, who's thinking from a scarcity mindset or speaking from scarcity, right? Like you can understand all of this, and a psychology book is truly helping me see business and the relationships and everything from a different light. And one thing I'll leave you with this book, and it just solidified something I already did, is that every time, and I know I've shared this on other episodes, is every time I go to some type of a networking event, I always walk in there with one goal in mind. I want to meet one person. That is it, one person. But my choice and my goal is to give value to them first, expect nothing in return. And I can tell you that it comes back tenfold again and again and again. So that is like that psychology of persuasion, specifically reciprocity. And so I'm always like, I want to meet one person. How can I help them? Let me give to them first, and I expect nothing in return. That fills me up on a personal level. And then often, who knows, months down the road, it literally just happened. Months down the road, met someone for coffee, and boom, got a referral. Like it's just crazy. And so the more you do that, it fills you up. This is a great book for anybody. Highly, highly recommend. And I can tell you this is probably going to be one that I'm going to read every year or every 2 years, just to come back, because again, the more experience you have, the more it truly just like it changes when you read books for the second time. All right, let's move on to number 2. So number 2 is Outliers: The Story of Success by Malcolm Gladwell. I hope you'll see all of these on YouTube. But this one, it was so funny. When I was actually at Barnes& Noble, I went into a good old bookstore. The kids love going to bookstores. So I was in there and I was just browsing around, and this one caught my eye. And it was funny, the lady checking out, she's like, "Oh, is that for your son for like a high school project?" I was like, no, it's for me, the 44-year-old business owner. That's who it's for. So it was just funny because I love Jax hasn't asked for this book, but I love that it's like in education. And I can tell you that this book, there are some great themes in it. And overall, like we see these outliers, these hugely successful people, whether it's in business, in life, in sports, all these different things. And what Malcolm does is he really dives down to really understand things that we commonly don't think about. And there's a few things that I just want to speak to. This is a great book. I read this literally, it's a pretty big book. I don't know, a few hundred pages. Okay, so 280-ish pages, not bad. I read this in a weekend. It was so quick and it was so interesting to read about. But he talks about this 10,000 hour rule. And essentially, some of the best like sports athletes, some of the best professionals, it's like this 10,000 hours. The reason why they're so good, maybe it's not because of talent or luck, even though we're going to talk about that a little bit. It's like they've put in the reps. You've heard me talk about this on other shows. How do we get to the point where we're just putting in the reps, regardless of the outcome? It literally doesn't matter whether you get the desired outcome or not, but are you just putting in the reps to like get to where you want to go, to build the skill, to learn the thing? And so if you put in 10,000 hours, now you've mastered it. And so I just love that. The other thing is about like that he discusses in this, and he uses stories and real live examples, and I love it, love it, love it, is the timing of success. And he even goes into like, tech icons like Bill Gates, this time frame when all this tech came about, right? We know when all like the internet, computers, all of this, there is a group of people that you would consider tech icons. I'm just using Bill Gates is really relatable, whether you like him or not. Um, is they were all born within a couple years of each other. It's incredible. He goes through all the dates. So it matters certain things, right? Like the Rockefellers, Charles Schwab, like all these different things, the steel, like everything. It matters when you were born and what was going on. A lot of these people, yes, had the desire to want to learn something, but it was also at like the precipice of when that was happening in history. And so would Bill Gates, if he was born a decade earlier, be Bill Gates now? Probably not. That's what it goes to show. Then it comes back to, okay, so it matters when you were born, like what year you were born, to what's going on in society and civilization, to then tying it to the 10,000 hour rule, right? If you're sneaking in to get extra computer time at your university, if you happen to go to the university that has one of three computers in the nation, you're going to get more hours on it. So there is some luck, there is some timing on success that happens. And then one of the stories, I'm not going to share anything more on it. I'll just say like cultural backgrounds and plane crashes is an incredible story, and it just as a leader in an organization, and they're talking cultural like where you were born. I'm talking cultural in a company, though. This really helped me think about like the culture that we're creating in the company and the comfortability for any person at any level to not only fail and make mistakes, but to like bring it up and talk about it and speak up when they disagree with something. And that story in the book, it's enough for you to buy it. So great, great book. I think about, myself and that 10,000 hour rule to be able to achieve mastery. And I could think about like it was 20 years. I shared episodes on this in my life in horses. I compete with horses. There's our like Super Bowl of horse shows that happens once a year. And it was 20 years from the last time I competed in it to now. And I had been riding pretty consistently. I took a short break when I had the kids, pretty consistently over 20 years to make it back to that horse show. I was top 20 in the world. I was actually ninth. Like it's like I put in the hours. Of course, I made it unreasonable for me not to succeed. Plus, there was some timing of success there. Another thing I think about is like how comfortable I am on camera. I put in the reps. I've put in the reps. I didn't used to be comfortable, but now I am. Another thing I think about, and one thing that I love to do as a podcast host is interview other people. Well, guess what? I have 2 decades of marketing and sales experience. One of the best things about sales is listening. So as a host, I have tuned in, I have trained my listening skills to hear certain things that people say that most people will breeze right by. But because of my 10,000 plus hours in sales, I pick up on it and I dive in. That is one of the things, to my own horn here, that I feel that makes me a great podcast host, is because I can listen. And that all comes from the hours that I put in on sales. So, I love this. I love this idea. There's so many takeaways in this book for life and your professional career as a business leader, whatever it is that you want to do. So grab Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. All right, let's move on to number 3. And this one is a fun one. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one because guess what? I've recorded an entire episode on this one. And this one is Relentless, From Good to Great to Unstoppable by Tim Grover. If you tuned into episode 158, we can link that down in the notes too. That's leveraging your dark side for good. This was all because of this book, Relentless by Tim Grover. And this is one of the books that I read this book. It was funny. I picked it up. I don't know. It was talking to me. I picked it up and I was like, I read it this summer. I literally read it, I think in like three days. I couldn't put it down. Everything in there, like fireworks were going off in my brain as I was reading it. It was my second time. I could see my old notes that I took the first time that I read it. And this time, none of the notes coincided. Like everything that I was looking at last time, I breezed right by this time. But there were new things because of new experience I've gained in the several years since reading that book. I believe that book came out in 2012. I didn't read it then. I bet you I read it like 2015, 16, something like that. But several years since reading it. And oh my gosh, this just lit a fire. If you have ever wondered, man, I'm just different. I do things differently. I feel different. I don't fit in. Let me tell you, this book is for you and you have to read it more than once. I normally don't speak in definitives, but you have to read this one more than once. Give yourself some time in between. But Tim talks about in this book, coolers, closers, and cleaners. And if you're unfamiliar with Tim Grover, he is probably one of the most well known if in the athlete world, like Michael Jordan. He was Michael Jordan's like personal coach. Kobe Bryant, many other sports players, he is that guy. And what I love about him, and if you've been tuning into the show, he is mindset. Not only is he all about the athletic ability and the physical side of his athletes, but it is all mindset. And he talks about, like I said, coolers, closers, and cleaners. Coolers, they perform well, but they don't want to seek out risk. They follow directions and they like predictability, right? Then you have your closers. Those are the people that like excel under pressure. They finish tasks, effectively, but sometimes they need some motivation and direction. You got to push them a little bit, but they can, by the name of it, come in and close the deal. And then you have cleaners, and they're relentless in the pursuit of their goals. They're driven by this like inner force that is unexplainable, right? This is where I said, if you feel different, this book, I kid you not, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. And, cleaners, they take control. We push boundaries, we do the unexpected, and we do the work that is required regardless of how we feel. And it just put everything into place for me. And it helps me in even how we're building our team. Like this book spoke to me as a leader. It's also spoke to me in who I want to bring onto our team. And you hear this in various other forms when people talk about like A players, B players, or C players, like in organizations. You only want an A and a B player. You don't want any C players, like how to move C players on, like all these different things. This book just will help you think bigger as a leader and the people that you are building up in your organization, and it will definitely put you in your place. So this is one of those books, again, read again and again. And I encourage you to go back to episode 158, listen to that. That's one little piece about leveraging your dark side. All right, 2 more guys, and then we're going to close it out here. But number 4 is Poor Charlie's Almanack by Peter D. Kaufman. Now, this book, oh gosh, if you're on YouTube, you can see all my little tabs. This book, it's funny. I've heard about this book again and again, and I was like, no. Charlie was like an investor. Why would I need to do this? But this year alone, I have just become amazed at Charlie Munger. And I wanted to like understand, read. I wanted to like take in anything I could get on him. I'm watching old YouTube talks of him. Like he is a brilliant, brilliant man. And if you've never heard of him, he was essentially the right-hand man of Warren Buffett. They like it wasn't even the right-hand man. They were partners. So Berkshire Hathaway, everything. He has an incredible background. He was an attorney and then left and got into real estate. And then him and Warren met and then built Berkshire Hathaway into what it is. And there are so many great things in this book. It is a collection of his talks, and he goes back and even shares some of this. Charlie just recently passed away at 99 years old, but was like witty and strong all the way till the end, like had strong mental aptitude all the way. And just this book, like reading some of the talks, I'm going to tell you guys, there were many times this book was over my head. I was like, oh my gosh, he's giving a talk at a Harvard, law. He is giving another talk, like, yeah, here's the Harvard Law commencement speech. He talks about worldly wisdom. I love this. All of it. Like, it's just that grandpa that you always wanted that had an incredibly successful business and wanted to share everything and was so like dry. His humor, if you watch his talks on YouTube, is so good. He's so impressive. But I really, really love this. And there are a few things that I've taken away just personally from Charlie Munger, and it is all of the mental models. And it's funny because I think I've been doing this naturally, just with certain decisions and how, like, right? Like how many times we've failed, being able to see that and being able to move on and make decisions quicker. And he has three model like mental he has many mental models, right? These are just processes, right? It's a model that you can follow. Inversion, he says invert, always invert, right? And that comes from a mathematician actually, but I actually talk about inversion. This is one of the mental models that I picked up. I mean, I talked about it. I went back just to name a few episodes. I've talked about inversion, which I got from Charlie Munger, right? And this is a great way to get a taste of who Charlie Munger is this poor Charlie's Almanack. But I talk about inversion on episodes. I just went back a little bit. 98, 132, 138, 169, 170, and now 172, like this episode. And so it's just one of those things that I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is ingrained. This is helping me make better decisions all day long. He also talks about like a circle of competence, like stay with what you know. And the way that I think about this all of the time, and I've talked about this on the show, is saying no as an entrepreneur is a hard thing to do, but it is probably the number one skill that you can leverage. Because as an entrepreneur, we see problems and we want to solve them immediately. But if it's outside our circle of competence, we need to stay away. And this is like he shares stories of how like he has made investments that were outside the circle of his competence and boom, it went the wrong way. And so he knows how to stay where he is. That's why Chris and I get opportunities all the time and we just immediately pair it to, does this help Brian contracting or not? If it doesn't, it is a no. It's like so easy. So staying in that circle of competence. And so like I said, there are so many takeaways in this book just about mental models, just that worldly wisdom. And that's what I want to speak to less as I just share this. You can tell, like, I'm not giving you all business books. Don't get me wrong. I love business books, but they're not all business books because I have realized the more and more in my career is that it's actually all these other things like psychology. How can psychology help me in this? How can these mental models from a financial guy help me? And Charlie speaks to it all the time about having a multidisciplinary approach to learning. He would take physics and psychology and help him analyze businesses on whether he was going to buy it or not. And so, I mean, it hopefully is starting to make sense why my book list isn't like, oh, business books on marketing, sales, leadership, all this stuff. Like this book is going to be another reread for me simply because it was there were parts of it that were over my head that engaged me to then go seek knowledge so that I could understand it when I come back to it. So I'm really excited about this one and really recommend like it's so funny. I'm excited to read it again because it was over my head at points that I'm like, oh, I can't wait till see what I learn next. All right. All right, let's round it out here. If you stuck around, I hope one of these books is sparking your interest and just even like hearing me, like my excitement about reading. I think it's reading is so great. And I never thought I would be the last person to ever say that. But the last book I'm going to round it out with, and I giggle at the title here because I'm like immediately I was like, okay, a-hole, like whatever, but it also intrigued me. The last book is How to Make a Few Billion Dollars by Brad Jacobs. So billion, okay, with a B. So right off the bat, I'm like, oh, arrogant prick, right? Because I'm like, oh. But then I'm also like, okay, well, if he's claiming that, then did he really do it? Yes. So let me tell you, this book has really, it's been so quick to read. Brad writes it. It's just like quick to the point. Here's what it is, and you can hear his heart in it. And there's already things that we have taken that I mean, even this morning I was talking to Chris just about how he ran some of his meetings and how we can implement that with our teams, maybe not at the same level, but in the same way. And he has created $7 billion companies. So, of course, with that track record, as he shares it in the first chapter or two, I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm going to listen. Yep, tuning in. You're not just some fake guy on, social media claiming whatever, sitting by a car. Like you really have done the thing. And some of these companies, actually, one of the companies we use in our construction company. So it's like it's just so funny when, paths cross like that. But he talks about his approach to scaling businesses, right? And the level, $1 billion, okay? Scaling businesses, strategic acquisitions, something we are looking forward to in the future, leadership, hiring, and just like his overall growth mindset. And one of the biggest takeaways, and this is actually a piggyback on Charlie Munger, is Brad, he like seeks the problems. He's like, tell me the problem. This is like an entrepreneur mindset too. Tell me the problem. It's an opportunity. He wants to know all the problems in his business because those are like opportunities to get better. Those are opportunities to make more money, to grow the business, to serve more people, to help his team make more money and provide for their families. Like, so it's so funny. This is the same way I think about failures. I don't look at I'm like, let me fail. I learned the lesson and move on. Like, that's so great. If I hadn't failed, I wouldn't know that now. And it's the same thing. Like, you see these problems, like, give me the problems. Chris is so good at this in the field. I mean, construction is only problems. And so, when in this book, when he talks about all the problems that he's seeking, and he's like, oh, those are the gold mines. That's what I want. And so this is my most recent read, and I can't believe it. It even made the top 5 of the year because it just like prompts you to think bigger, right? To identify like these bold, ambitious goals and then reverse engineer the steps to be able to achieve it, right? You can use always invert. You can use inversion. So see how these are all tying together, but I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. But How to Make a Few Billion Dollars by Brad Jacobs. Great book to make you think differently, lead differently, and like think bigger than what you thought before and be able to approach problems with a different mind. So, all right, there's my 5. Don't worry, they are linked down below, but there were so many books that I read this year. I really invested the time, but these were my top 5 for, I believe I shared very different reasons. If anything, I hope that you take away the fact that reading is just an easy investment to grow your multidisciplinary approach to business and life. You like how I tied that in? right? I can't believe it. Like the more I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't just want to study business, business, business if you're doing business. What else? I need to, like, I'm growing my financial knowledge right now, all these different things to be able to excel and have different perspectives when you approach these problems. So, all right, if you love this show, don't forget to share it out. And also, if you want, connect with me on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Instagram. That's where I hang out. I'd love to connect there. If this episode hits and you see this reel or video or whatever come live, let me know if there's a specific book you want me to dedicate to an entire episode, and I will dive in there. I will share my takeaways and then how that comes back. So let me know in the comments, shoot me a DM either way. And don't forget to connect so we can follow together and keep taking more action.